Episode 5 of The Believers starts at the hospital where Abbot Vera is undergoing treatment. Ekachai thanks Wen for finding the abbot on time, but Deer and Game wonder what he was doing at the abbot's residence late that night. After a few days, the abbot returns to the temple to recuperate, and on the same day, Monk Dole leaves to head back to his forest temple. Deer hands the drawings of the Dharma Pavilion so he can hand them over to the abbot at the forest temple and tell him that everyone wants him to stay and they all love him. However, Wen has been MIA since the abbot's hospitalization. On the same day, Game heads to the lawyer's office to make payment, and the lawyers start to show interest in him, asking about their new business since they could pay the interest and a large sum of the principal. Game does not give him an ear when he invites him for a meal and to play golf, but takes the receipt and stops by the family water business. He comes bearing gifts for his niece and is happy to see him. Inside, his cousin Oat, a graduate from Harvard, is getting interviewed about taking over the family business, and his grandfather, aunt, and uncle do not acknowledge Game's presence. Elsewhere, Monk Dole arrives back at the forest temple, but when greeting the abbot, images of Deer keep flashing in his head and interrupting his chants. Deer continues her work at the temple while Wen takes some time off at home to help his mother with the renovations while making more money for the trio through trading. Things start to get messy at the temple when the police raid after reports of a drug cartel operating from the temple. It turns out that Tang and his fake mink friends were smuggling drugs through the temple, and while his friends are arrested, Tang manages to elude the police. The police coming to the temple exposes Wen, Game, and Deer to the radar of a detective who starts taking photos around the temple of the many things they donated under their family names. The monks are put through urinalysis. Tang's friends think that Ekachai ratted them to the authorities and threatens him before being taken away by the police. The believers shun the temple, and the place bustling with activities becomes deserted like it was the first time Wen and his friends found it. At the forest temple, the abbot updates Monk Dole about the drug incident at the city temple. The National Office of Buddhism calls the abbot asking about Monk Dole, but he says that Dole had stayed there temporarily and was not involved in the drug scandal. Fortunately, Monk Dole had left the temple in time and was not tied to the incident. The abbot applauds his work on the podcast, saying he enjoyed listening to Monk Dole's podcast. Entrepreneurs keep receiving hit after hit with bad news on the internet. First, the clip of the grannies fighting after the drug bust at the temple, with one side standing up for the monks while the other condemning them, then the clip of Tang escaping from the police at the karaoke bar, which has millions of views, tarnished the temple's image. The image of the temple continues to deteriorate online, and people cannot get a hold of Tang. Game worries they will not have enough money to pay the upcoming loan installment, while Wen still seems out of it. Ekachai informs them that the National Office of Buddhism has cleared the temple, and they can continue running the daily operations as usual. The drug incident is related to Tang and his men and has nothing to do with the temple. Ekachai adds that even though they can continue to operate as usual, it is not guaranteed that people will come back, as it all depends on individual faith. Those who still believe in Buddhism will still visit the temple. Meanwhile, Monk Dole cannot seem to get the city out of his head, and while making his evening prayers, a firefly flies into the room, reminding him of the time he met Deer at the gravesite. Consequently, the vendors are operating the flea market at the temple for a rent refund. Deer calls Wen to ask about the details of the pavilion, and while distracted on the phone, a ball rolls from the shelf at the top of his bookcase and hits his cat. The cat limps a little and jumps on his bed. As Wen focuses on it to check whether it is okay, an idea for the next business item pops into his mind. His cat wears an amulet that Deer bought for him as a gift. The following day, Wen arrives at the temple office with the amulet and tells Game and Deer about his new idea about selling amulets. Game thinks the concept is not viable since his family collects amulets and people are only interested in the ones attached to famous monk legends or hundreds of years old. Deer thinks they can handle that by creating stories for each amulet, and Wynn believes they can ride the negative online presence that has made the temple famous and reach a broad audience. The episode review. Did Monk Dole fall in love with Deer? His interactions with her were suspicious, especially when he lost his cool when someone interrupted their little chats. However, watching him forget his prayers when Deer flashes through his mind is still dumbfounding. We knew Tang would be in trouble, and his greed brought the police right to the entrepreneur's doorsteps. Will he rat them out if he gets arrested? Wynn has been in the background for most of the episodes, and we can only see Deer and Wynn busy with the day-to-day running of the temple, which makes viewers question his role, but from this episode, we learn that he is the ideal person while Game and Deer are the implementers. The episode cruised past the issue with Wynn finding the abbot collapsed in his room as if nothing suspicious, but we still wonder about what he was doing in the room that late. About the loan repayment, will the lawyer start to create trouble for them since he seems curious about their new business? In the following episodes, the writers should delve into the family drama and the detectives looking closer into the temple's affairs to add complexity and tension for the entrepreneurs. Will they still get through the scrutiny and make the loan installments?